If you were to like open your phone right now and just sort of scan the front pages of the major Arab media networks, we're talking Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, Asharq Al-Awsat.
Oh, like the big ones?
Exactly, the major players. And if you look specifically at their coverage of this incredibly tense standoff right now between the United States, Israel, and Iran, you'd notice something really striking.
You really would.
Because, I mean, you might expect to be hit with a wall of, like, dense, highly technical international relations jargon, right? But to truly grasp the core perspective of these outlets, to really understand the mood in those newsrooms, you don't actually need a degree in geopolitics.
No, not at all.
You literally just need to look at one specific, highly representative word that they just keep using over and over.
It is honestly remarkable how much geopolitical weight can be kind of compressed into just a few syllables. And looking at our sources for this deep dive today, which we're pulling directly from recent editorials and headlines across all these major networks, we're basically putting on our linguistic detective hats.
Love a good linguistic detective moment.
Right. But to be clear right up front, our mission today is not to take political sides. We're not here to endorse any specific foreign policy regarding the U.S., Israel, or Iran.
Yeah, that's crucial. We're staying totally impartial on the politics.
Exactly. We are looking at this purely through the lens of media analysis and linguistics. We want to, decode the specific vocabulary these outlets are choosing. Well, those choices reveal a tremendous amount about how the region is framing this exact moment in history.
So we're analyzing the frame, not the painting itself, essentially.
Good way to put it.
And I think this is going to be incredibly useful for you listening, whether you are, say, an advanced Arabic learner hunting for the ultimate vocabulary guide to, like, level up your reading comprehension.
Which this absolutely will do.
Or, if you're simply someone fascinated by how language shapes our perception of global conflict, understanding the single word provides this massive aha moment.
It really does.
But before we get to the word itself, let's just look at the overarching sentiment in our stack of sources. Because when I read Western coverage of these Middle Eastern standoffs, the vocabulary often paints the situation as this very calculated strategic chess match.
Yes, the chess match metaphor.
Right. You see English phrases like calculated maneuvers or deterrent strategies or, shifting paradigms. And it implies agency, doesn't it? Like, it implies the political actors are taking turns moving pieces on a board, trying to secure some kind of strategic advantage.
And that chess match framing, it is almost entirely absent across the Arab media landscape right now.
Really? Completely absent.
Pretty much, yeah. When you read the recent op-eds in Asharq Al-Awsat, or if you watch the panel discussions on Al Jazeera, they aren't describing a game where someone eventually, calls checkmate and walks away the victor.
So what are they describing?
The dominant sentiment is this profound sense of irreversibility. There is a very heavy, destructive premonition hanging over the coverage. The journalists and analysts are basically describing a situation that fundamentally lacks a braking mechanism.
A situation with no brakes. Wow. That completely changes the visual, doesn't it?
It shifts the entire paradigm.
Because in the Western chess match metaphor, you have time to think between moves. You pause, you plan. But if you have no brakes, time is actively working against you.
Exactly.
And I guess that brings us to the actual Arabic phrase that keeps showing up in all these headlines to communicate that specific premonition. It's the phrase, let me get this right, al-minikwatu al-shafa al-Hāwiya.
Spot on. And translated directly, that means the region is on the brink of the abyss.
The abyss.
Yeah. The absolute core of that phrase, like the anchor of this entire media narrative, is that last word, Al-Hawiyah, the abyss. Or, depending on the exact context, the cliff.
Al-Hawiyah. So if we plug that into the broader mood you just described, the media isn't looking at two cars playing a dangerous game of chicken on a flat highway, right? Because on a flat highway, someone can just swerve or hit the brakes at the last second.
Right, there's a way out.
But they're describing a car that has already blown past the warning signs, totally lost its brakes, and is speeding toward a cliff edge. The vocabulary implies this terrifying chain reaction.
That's the perfect analogy.
Right.
There's a point of no return. And once you cross it, you aren't driving anymore. You are just falling.
You're just falling, man.
Yeah, it marks a complete transition from horizontal movement, where you actually have agency and steering, to vertical movement, where gravity just takes over entirely.
Wow.
And the reason this specific word carries such an incredible feeling of inevitability goes far beyond just, abyss being a scary concept in general. It is literally rooted in the ancient mathematical mechanics of the Arabic language itself.
Okay, you know I love looking under the hood of a language.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Let's break down the mechanics. How does the grammatical engine of Al-Hawiyah actually function to create that sense of doom?
So Arabic is a Semitic language, which means its vocabulary is built on a system of root letters, usually 3 consonants. You can think of the root as like a skeleton of meaning.
A skeleton, okay.
For example, if you take the root KTB, anything you build with those 3 letters will have something to do with writing. So a book, a desk, a writer, they all share that KTB skeleton.
Got it. So what's the skeleton for our word?
The root for Al-Hawiyah is HWY, the letters Ha, Wa, and Ya. And the inherent ancient meaning embedded in that specific 3-letter skeleton is the concept of falling, sinking, or collapsing.
So the very DNA of the word is downward motion.
Exactly.
It's not describing some stationary hole in the ground that's just sitting there. The idea of sinking is baked right into the basic building block of the word.
Right. And then we apply the morphology, meaning how that root is shaped into this specific noun. Grammatically, Al-Hawiyah is constructed as a feminine active participle.
Okay, active participle. Remind me what that means in this context.
An active participle describes the doer of an action, or an entity that is currently embodying that action. So when we translate it simply as abyss in English, we actually lose a massive amount of the dynamic action present in the original Arabic.
Because abyss just sounds like a noun, a place.
Exactly. But based on its grammatical form, Al-Hawiyah doesn't mean a static, empty void waiting for you. It literally means the thing that is falling downward.
Wait. If it's an active participle, the Arabic word for abyss is the act of falling itself.
That is the literal grammar of it, yes.
The abyss isn't the destination at the bottom of the cliff. The abyss is the fall.
That is the grammatical reality of the word. It is an active, present, continuous process of plummeting.
What a brilliant grammatical metaphor. I mean, it completely mirrors the political anxiety we're seeing in the sources.
It really does.
If the abyss is the thing that is falling, it implies this gravity-driven, completely unresisting drop. Once the geopolitical situation goes over the edge of Al-Hawiyah, any diplomatic talks or, political interventions just lose their footing.
Because you cannot negotiate with gravity.
Right, you can't. The region just enters an absolute free fall.
And that grammatical metaphor of a heavy, unresisting fall aligns perfectly with the political fear of a regional war that nobody can stop once it starts. The word itself contains a warning about the physics of conflict.
The physics of conflict. I love that phrasing.
But of course, this word doesn't just sit alone on the page. Journalists have to write entire articles describing how these nations are getting to that edge in the first place.
Right, because if you're reading a 1,000-word editorial in Al Jazeera, they have to describe the journey to the cliff. And since Al-Hawiyah is an active fall, it must force these journalists to use very specific verbs to describe how these countries got pushed over the edge.
It definitely does. And this brings us to what we can call the golden keys for learners who are trying to master high-level political Arabic.
Oh, this is the advanced vocabulary guide part.
Exactly. You need to know the collocations, basically, the words that frequently pair with our main noun. And the most critical verb you will see paired with Al-Hawiyah in the current coverage is the concept of Al-Anzilaq.
Al-Anzilaq. Okay, how does that translate in the context of these geopolitical headlines?
It translates to slipping, sliding, or gliding, but specifically in the context of slipping out of control. So you will constantly see the phrase Al-Anzilaq nawa al-Hawiyah slipping towards the abyss.
Slipping towards the fall.
Right. And just like with our main word, the real magic here is in the grammatical structure. Al-Anzilaq is the verbal noun of a Form 7 verb.
Okay, Form 7, what does that signify?
So in Arabic grammar, verbs are categorized into different forms, numbered from I to X, and each one carries a different nuance. The defining characteristic of a Form 7 verb is that it carries a passive or non-voluntary meaning.
Passive meaning what exactly in this case?
It denotes an action that happens to you, an action you are subjected to, rather than an action you deliberately initiate and control.
Ah, I see. So it's the difference between saying, I enthusiastically slid down the playground slide versus I slipped on a patch of black ice and have literally no control over where my body is going.
Yes. It conveys a total lack of agency. When Arab media describes political actors like the U.S., Israel, Iran, as experiencing Al-Anzilaq towards the abyss, they're using a grammatical form that inherently means being dragged or slipping involuntarily.
Yeah, that's heavy.
It really captures this highly irrational state where these incredibly powerful nations with massive militaries are seen as being pulled into a wider, devastating conflict almost against their own conscious will. They are caught on geopolitical black ice.
Okay, but I have to push back slightly on what that implies for the journalism itself.
Sure, go for it.
If the media is consistently choosing to use a passive, non-voluntary verb like Al-Anzilaq, doesn't that subtly remove the blame from the politicians? That's a fair question.
Right, because is an outlet like Al-Arabiya framing the narrative as, oops, the leaders slipped, it was a total accident, rather than saying, hey, these leaders made distinct, aggressive choices to escalate this conflict? Because to me, there is a massive moral difference between accidentally tripping over the edge and choosing to dive off.
That is a very sharp observation about media framing. And you're right, using passive language can often obscure direct responsibility.
Yeah.
However, in the context of this specific regional coverage, the usage of Form 7 verbs isn't actually about absolving the leaders of their initial choices.
It's not.
No, it's actually a critique of their hubris.
Oh, interesting. How so?
The media is essentially saying, you leaders think you are playing a masterstroke in a chess match, but you have actually stepped onto a slippery slope. Your supposed strategic maneuvers are really just you flailing as you slide downwards.
Wow, okay.
It highlights the terrifying momentum of the situation, showing that the forces they unleashed are now commanding them, not the other way around. It's a warning against arrogance. It's less about saying, it's not your fault, and much more about highlighting that, the aggressive choice you made a week ago has now triggered a reaction you can no longer manage.
Exactly. The momentum has taken over.
Are there other vocabulary pairings in this sort of linguistic ecosystem of anxiety that readers should look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. You will frequently see the words huffa or shafa, both of which translate to the edge or the brink.
Okay, brink.
When you see hafat al-Hawiyah, you are looking at the exact Arabic equivalent of the political term brinkmanship. The strategy of pushing a dangerous situation to the verge of disaster in order to achieve the most advantageous outcome.
Brinkmanship is such a sterile academic word in English, though.
It really is.
But in Arabic, pushing things right to the edge of Al-Hawiyah means betting you can stop the slip, the Al-Anzilaq, before the gravity of the fall just entirely takes over. It's so much more vivid. We have the slippery slope, the brink, and the active gravity-driven fall waiting right below.
It is deeply visual. But to feel the full weight of this vocabulary, we have to look beyond modern journalism.
Okay, taking a step back.
Yeah, because we've looked at the current political application, and we've looked at the mechanical grammar of the roots. But language is history. Arabic is a language profoundly concerned with cultural resonance and historical memory.
So this isn't just a modern invention.
Not at all. Al-Hawiyah isn't some trendy buzzword coined by a pundit on a Sunday morning talk show last week.
Words carry baggage, and when journalists said Asharq Al-Awsat reach for this specific word instead of like a more generic term for crisis, they are actively tapping into that baggage.
Exactly.
So where does the historical weight of Al-Hawiyah actually come from?
It has deep, ancient roots in classical Arabic literature, and most significantly in the Quran. It's a word carrying an immense theological and cultural payload.
A theological payload. Okay, tell me more about that.
So in the Quran, specifically in Surah Al-Qari'ah, which roughly translates to the calamity or the striking hour, the word Al-Hawiyah is used in the 9th verse.
The calamity. That already sets quite a tone.
It does. This surah describes the day of judgment, a time of ultimate reckoning and, cosmic upheaval. Sure. And the verse says, Fa'umuhu Hāwiyyah. This is often translated as, his mother will be Al-Hawiyah, meaning his abode, his ultimate, inescapable destination will be the bottomless pit.
Wait, his mother will be the abyss.
Yes.
That is a haunting metaphor.
Yeah.
Because a mother embraces her child, right? In this context, the abyss is embracing the damned.
It describes a place of ultimate, terrifying finality for those whose good deeds are light on the scales.
That is a remarkably dark, all-consuming image to bring into a modern newspaper headline about foreign policy.
It really is.
What does it mean for our understanding of the news when a modern secular journalist reaches for that specific classical word?
I think it's a phenomenal example of how modern Standard Arabic leverages its classical heritage. Because for an Arabic speaker, reading Al-Hawiyah in an article about a potential regional war doesn't just signify a bad political outcome.
It hits deeper.
Much deeper. It strikes a chord deep in the cultural subconscious. It paints the crisis not just as a diplomatic failure, but with a sense of ultimate doom, of end times devastation. It basically elevates a secular political conflict into a narrative of profound existential calamity.
It's almost like the difference between an English newspaper saying, the economy is going to enter a recession versus saying, we are facing a financial Armageddon.
That's a great comparison.
Right. Because the word Armageddon brings a whole different level of historical and religious panic to the sentence. Our English political jargon just sounds so incredibly boring and clinical compared to this apocalyptic freefall.
And for the Arabic learner, this is honestly the ultimate takeaway for building advanced vocabulary. Mastering high-level reading comprehension isn't just about, memorizing flashcards with direct English translations.
It's never that simple.
It requires understanding the semantic field of a word. You have to look at its three-letter root, its grammatical structure, the collocations it attracts, and its ancient cultural echoes. When you understand all of that, you aren't just reading the news. You are feeling the cultural temperature of the region.
You are feeling the premonition.
Precisely.
Man, this has been such a fascinating linguistic investigation. We started this deep dive with a stack of geopolitical sources detailing a very complex standoff between global powers. But by isolating a single word, we discovered this highly dynamic visual and historical landscape.
It's all hidden right there in the text.
It is. And for anyone listening, whether you are actively studying Arabic or just, striving to be a more informed consumer of international news, I suspect the word Al-Hawiyah is now permanently etched in your mind.
I'd imagine so.
It isn't just a static noun for a hole in the ground. It is an entire, present, continuous picture of losing control and an involuntary slip on geopolitical black ice, accelerating downward with the apocalyptic weight of ancient history right behind it.
And taking all of this into account, looking at how the major media networks covering this region utilize vocabulary that overwhelmingly implies a loss of control and a destined slide into the abyss. Well, it leaves us with something quite profound to consider regarding how information is consumed.
You mean the idea that language shapes our reality?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Language frames what we believe is possible. If the dominant linguistic framing of a conflict makes disaster feel utterly inevitable, if the words themselves structurally deny the possibility of control or reversal, does that language actually discourage diplomatic solutions?
That's a terrifying thought.
If millions of people are reading daily that their leaders are involuntarily slipping into a gravitational fall, does talking constantly about an unavoidable abyss eventually become a self-fulfilling prophecy?
If the language dictates that we have already lost the brakes, do the politicians even bother trying to find the pedal? That is a really heavy thought to sit with. And a great place to wrap up. The next time you are reading the news, whether it's local coverage or international reports, just take a moment to look past the raw facts. Listen closely to the specific words being used to deliver those facts. Ask yourself, are the journalists describing a chess match, or are they describing a fall? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the headlines.